Hello, welcome to today's video diary for finding my way with Pi, purpose, intention, and emotion. I thought that it was pretty interesting that on the heels of the distress I was feeling yesterday after that traffic aggression incident I experienced, that today my intention was that I wrote my gratitude journal first thing this morning. My intention today was to settle down into the peacefulness of all that is and of myself, and to let go of the distress and the frustration or any power struggle from that incident that happened yesterday, to just let it go. So the topic of study this week in my class, and I've been working on homework today, is the Ubuntu philosophy. I'm going to try to say this correctly. Ubuntu. It is a Zimbabwe and South African philosophy, a way of being. Ubuntu is a word. It essentially refers to the moral attribute of a person. I've been reading also the book The Awakened Woman by Tara Rai Trent, and she is from Zimbabwe, and her story is absolutely amazing. From poverty to systematic abuse and silencing of young women, to coming to America, to earning her education all the way through her PhD, to then opening a school back in her community back home, and then speaking all over the world. She's incredible. And she defines in her book, The Awakened Woman, Ubuntu as the essence of our humanity, knowing that we exist because of others, and that it's our collectiveness that strengthens us. I've been feeling this year since January, and right now it's early October. I started this journey, finding my way with Pi, where I curiously observe my emotions each day. I started it because I was suffering. I was experiencing extreme burnout and depression and beginning to experience mental and physical health crises, and I needed to do something different because my life looked perfect from the outside, but I was not okay inside. As I've gone through this journey, I have discovered that there is this collectiveness to the experience that I am having. Carl Rogers is a philosopher and psychologist, and he explains that what is most personal is most universal. So slowly over time, the Finding My Way with Pi community via this YouTube channel has been growing, and I'm hearing reflected back to me through this that the experience is collective, that it is common. And as I was discovering myself through examining my own emotions, I discovered my voice. I began to see reflections of humanity and growth and change and transformation in nature, or maybe nature was reflecting back to me what humanity's nature is. I have began to understand a deeper level that we do need to turn inwards and heal and seek self-knowledge and self-discovery before we're able to grow and change and collectively heal. So many people I talk to, they don't want to meditate, they don't want to do yoga, they don't want to speak to a therapist, they don't want to pause, they stay busy, busy, busy. I recognize it because I did the same thing for decades, and they'll tell me in their own words, when I get still or it's quiet, I cry. There's like too much pain or too much stuff that I've got buried down in here. I don't want to think about it. So I stay busy. And there's this misconception, I guess, or maybe I should just call it a common practice. I don't know how many of us fool ourselves when we do that, because ultimately that gig is up when you have a breakdown But I think in our society, there's this pervasive pattern that's like, if I just pretend everything is okay, or if I'm so busy, or it's not okay to experience painful or uncomfortable things, thereby we refuse ourselves, we refuse our own story, we won't hold it and own it. It leads to great suffering and isolation, unfortunately, because then if you can't even be honest with yourself, you certainly can't be honest with other people. I've lived this last year, and I've understood the blossoming and the awakening at a deeper level that comes with, all right, I'm going to acknowledge what's going on with me. I'm going to examine the emotions, even if they hurt. I'm doing this because I need to, because whatever I was doing wasn't working, and I need to know why. And nothing outside of me is telling me, nothing is teaching me. I need to know why. So I need to go within. So let me bring this back around to Ubuntu. There was a part of me that yes, I had to heal and I had to own my own story, but I also kept, and I even use these words, I just want to do something that's meaningful. I just want to do something that helps other people. I feel the best when my work is helping other people, not squeezing other people for the greatest profit or gain. Just that was terrible. Ubuntu talks about the collectiveness of us all. I think what we're experiencing is in our society in particular and in the world, is a need for collective healing. So check this out, where Ubuntu came from. Ubuntu, again, came from South African and Zimbabwe cultures in particular, where it gained a lot of philosophical attention. I'm reading from my notes here. In those areas, especially in the early 21st century, because they needed homegrown philosophies to move forward following these political disturbances that have been caused by the liberation war. So the countries experiencing war and the terrible traumas that come from that, and apartheid, respectively. So I was studying an article by Fenos Mangina that was written in 2020 about this, and that was one of his statements in this article, which got me thinking. This Ubuntu, we're all interconnected. Ubuntu embraces the interconnectedness of all. If we look at other philosophers in history, Confucius talks about the interconnectedness of all. Ralph Waldo Emerson talks about the nature in us all and how we are all interconnected. Tara Rai Trent, who wrote The Awakened Woman, who writes about Ubuntu and sacred dreams, she talks about the collectiveness of us all. And in Western society, where I live, we don't talk about that. It's all about the self. It's all about, it's self-centric. What can we do to get ahead? What can we do to gain? What can we do? It's like me, and instant gratification. I live in it. And I've experienced it. I've also run that rat race and I'm still in the middle of it. But I've also know that we hit a wall eventually, that we have this existential meaninglessness inside of us when we live like this, because there's no connection to something that feels like it matters deeply. And what we're doing systematically and holistically doesn't sustain us. Not all of us. Some of us have it figured out. Some of us don't feel like this. That's okay. But here's what I do know. We have a crisis of anxiety and depression and suicide. We have isolation happening with people feeling lonely, an epidemic of loneliness. Collectiveness isn't part of our pattern and our system in this society. So here I get thinking, we've studied Confucius, I've studied Emerson, I've studied Tara Rai Trent, and I just have this understanding that their philosophies which are great works. Oh, also let's add Margaret Wheatley into that. She indicated the importance of telling a news story and reclaiming our time and our life and creativity instead of the machination of humans, that we need to instead build everything around the having time to recover, having time to create together and learn together and be human, that we should be building our organizations, our schools, our universities, our society around the humanness of us. And that also is interconnected and collectively connected. So all of these things are born out of suffering. During Confucius's time, there was war and oppression and all kinds of things like that going on. Margaret Wheatley is talking about the burnout and the stress and the why the machination of humans doesn't work, that leadership philosophy doesn't work. We've got Tara Ray Trent talking about Ubuntu, and that was born out of circumstances of war and the apartheid. So those scenarios encourage that there must be a better way to be. It rose to the challenge of their times. Those philosophies filtered to the top because of the challenge of their times. I wonder what new philosophy we need to create now in our world, which means, what is the challenge of our time? Well, I honestly believe that the challenge of our time to a great extent is isolation, that we are disconnected from ourselves. We're not taught how to listen to our bodies. We're not submerged in nature anymore. We live in boxes. There's a thing called nature deficit disorder that most people suffer from nowadays. We are disconnected from each other. We connect via social media, but it's all superficial, and we need literal touch, shaking hands, patting backs, hugs. We need literal touch to develop as healthy humans. We need literal interactions to develop empathy as healthy humans. And when we miss that, we are disconnected from others. Social media cannot in and of itself be a substitute for this. We're disconnected from the earth, like I just talked about. I believe it's leading us in a way to hurt ourselves. The depression and suicide rates and anxiety rates and loneliness rates, burnout rates. We have signs of this all over the place, that something isn't working. It's not like it's 100% broken, but something isn't working. It is causing harm. We are beginning to see epidemics and crises in human wellness, as well as with our earth and the use of resources, extinction of animals, massive weather events that are worsening. I mean, all of these things. These are signs for us that there is a challenge of our times that we're ready to rise to, that we are invited to rise to, and remember the interconnectedness of us all. We need a new philosophy of life. And maybe it's not brand new. Maybe it's just telling an old story in a new way, like Margaret Wheatley has done. But we need this new philosophy now to permeate the individual, to permeate the family and communities, businesses, and society at large, so that we can acknowledge the whole story, not just what we want to see, or not just what gives us instant gratification, but the whole story. On an individual level, I think that we need to learn to own our own stories. We need to own all of our own stories, even though it's painful. We have to accept and love ourselves. We cannot accept and love others until we do that for ourselves. And as long as we deny ourselves that, then we are going to be stuck in this disconnected state with other people. We have to embrace our whole being with compassion and celebrate whole being. spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional as a priority and a way of life that things are designed around. In family and community, as we heal individually and embrace our whole being, our families can become healthier. We'll be able to reignite some healthy patterns and routines together through maybe like ritualizing whole being practices, things like cooking and sharing nutritious meals together regularly instead of prioritizing only extracurricular activities or homework over mealtime. We'll be able to talk together, share stories together. This is so incredibly important because we learn from stories. Stories connect us all. Not just clickbait, not just drama, not just negative things. Actually listening to and seeing each other and recognizing each other's stories and learning from that. Revitalizing some moral standards and behavior of how we treat ourselves and others and how we're connected to all. And in business, I believe that companies need to truly prioritize human wellness, not treat it like a side initiative or just this thing that makes them look good for having it. Really, really walk the talk. Are your work days organized around human wellness? Are you outsourcing to people who are working during night shifts, which has been proven in many countries to be a health hazard, leading to death in many circumstances, but certainly to many health hazards? Are you encouraging that just for cheaper labor in your organization? I mean, there's so many different things we can look at here to point to organizations that are not really embracing human wellness. They just say they are because they have an employee assistance program that'll give you 8 counseling sessions at no cost to the employee. I'm sorry, that's not enough. The system has to be designed for wellness so that you don't have to have the counseling sessions or the suicide hotlines for your employees. We need to prioritize around human wholeness and well-being. There were 10 qualities outlined by a philosopher called Przeski that are characteristic of the Ubuntu philosophy. And these just sound so beautiful and nurturing and welcoming to me. And I just want to read them real quick. Humaneness or humanism, gentleness, hospitality, empathy or taking care of others, deep kindness, friendliness, generosity, vulnerability, speaking your truth and owning your story, toughness, and compassion. I'm so passionate about this. I'm working towards adopting this new philosophy for myself, for my life, to create a community that is built on this new philosophy that I'm talking about, that is the challenge of our time. We need this to emerge to meet the challenge of our time so that we can all become interconnected again with each other and with the earth. It is time for healing, for collective healing. I feel so lucky to get to be part of this and part of learning this, to experience what this is like on an individual level, and then to make the connection to others and the interconnectedness of all of us in our communities, in our workplaces, in our society, even in the entire world. That's all I have today that I was thinking about. I've been spending my time studying these philosophies and studying, philosophy as it's connected to happiness. This is all part of my Master of Arts of Happiness Studies program, and I fully intend to continue my education in the area of human flourishing. And just as soon as it's announced that it is open, I'm going to do everything that I can to be one of the first people to go through the PhD program for human flourishing. Why? Because this is the challenge of our times, and this is what the world needs. And I want to rise to that challenge. And I think each of us can rise to that challenge on an individual level, and it will make a difference collectively. It starts with owning your story and self-compassion. Thank you for being with me on this journey. I am so glad that you are here, and I hope it helps you too. I'll see you tomorrow.